How are you?
I think the idea of your show is amazing.
You put in all the work when people aren't watching.
Hey, thank you. I'm honored. Thank you for being so cool.
And that's it. Have fun.
So let's get into it.
We are into it, brother. Dean Sir Niels, welcome back. Season 5, Episode 5. What have you been up to this week, my friend?
Well, I just realized I forgot to put a bright shirt on because I'm blowing into my background. But hey, crazy week for me. I was out on the East Coast. I was in Atlantic City, Virginia Beach, Richmond, Virginia. Absolute whirlwind. I had 70 people in Richmond, Virginia, just drilling me with questions. It was 2 hours of and it was great. They all very well received. It was a great conversation. Yeah, that was it. How about you?
Well, I can say this. You look like you've gotten a tan, so whatever you're doing, keep doing it. This week has been crazy. Between a lot of charity events coming up this weekend for Big Dog Ranch Rescue down here in South Florida. I think we have 3 events this weekend for that, so prepping for that. Finishing off the West Palm Beach Boat Show with different sponsors for that. To our USPG meeting tomorrow, to filming 8 episodes of Cocktail Corner with the local radio station, and consulting for Steel Tie Spirits' new cocktail list tomorrow. Sleep is an afterthought at this point, buddy.
I'll do it when I'm dead, they say, right? Yeah.
I was able to escape to Tampa for 24 hours and spend some time with the USPG Tampa president up there, Adrian, who showed me a good time. So, Adrian, thank you for that if you're watching.
Very good, very good. Yeah, it's just been a whirlwind. The beginning of this year has been so busy, and I know I'm not the only one. The more people I talk to, they're just saying that the beginning of this year has been crazy business-wise. So I've got 2 weeks at home, and then I'm doing my Wild World tour of Italy. I'm not excited at all.
I'm going to live vicariously through all your posts and all your videos, so you better share that on Cocktail Network Live because I'm jealous.
Yeah, I'll cut some videos and stuff. You're going to have a co-host that week, so if anybody wants to co-host, maybe our guest today can co-host one of the nights. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited to see how it all plays out. So it's going to be a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, a lot of great things coming up. We had a great I can only tease so much right now. A great meeting today of stuff that's going to help govern everything else moving forward for our bartending competitions. But just reminding everybody, we haven't posted it officially yet, but we've talked about it on this show. Cocktail Art Challenge, June 9th to the 11th, with National Flair Bartenders Day being June 10th, happening in Boca Raton Beer Garden again. Details will be coming soon on Bartend Better Now, but just save those dates. When I get a chance to do a save the date flyer, then we'll create one. I feel like we're on a wedding day, you and I.
Huge announcement coming. Huge announcement coming. Especially, it's so perfect. I love the fact that your competition lands on National Flair Bartenders Day, June 10th. There's always some fun stuff going on around that. I'll be in California that week, perhaps by design. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure you'll be able to pop in, and Joe will put you on the live feed because Joe's been doing a great job like he did in Vegas for us for the USPG shake-up. But I'm sure we'll get into that. But I don't know about you, Dean, but my ice is melting.
Yeah, I'm getting a little thirsty. Are you going first this week, or am I?
I don't know, so I think we should both be prepared because we forgot to ask that question. And let's just go
to ask Joe who's going first.
We are about to go into 1 minute mixology. Dean and I challenge each other every week to create a craft cocktail within 1 minute with a little bit of entertainment as well. And then whatever happens at the end of that 1 minute, we are forced reluctantly or pleasantly to drink for the rest of the show.
You got it. You're going first this week. I just read the text. Joe's keeping us tight here. All right, man. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, go!
All right, so today's cocktail is called the Velvet Touch, and it is a play on a Negroni. Double 2, 3, 4. Yeah, because we have a special guest coming on that likes Negronis. Bubble 2, 3, 4. So 1 ounce of Connection Kinship Gin, 1 ounce of dry vermouth, and then we're going to use a half ounce each of Munyon's Paw Paw, which is a papaya aperitif based here out of West Palm Beach, Florida.
Papaya.
A half ounce of Janipi, which is like a good substitute for green chartreuse if you don't have any right now. And it's wine based. We're going to stir that, and when we stir, we smile. I'm going to keep talking because apparently the algorithms like when I talk when I make this cocktail. Oh, look at that. Joe made the velvet touch nice and purple. I love it. We're going to strain that goodness right into our rocks glass over a large cube. And we're going to strain that with and garnish with a nice little orange zest.
Nice work. Well done, sir. Well done, sir.
Love the color.
I love it. The velvet touch. So nice, so nice. I was going to pick on you about something, but I forget what it was. So like it's all me now.
All right, Dean Sunils, in 3, 2, 1, go!
All right. Just like Rob, I am going to play today with a riff on a Negroni with my friend from Canada helping us out here today. All right. So I'm going to put some twists on it. I'm actually anxious to see how our guest feels about me ripping apart the Negroni the way that I am today. So that was a little bit of gin, a little bit of Aperol, and some dry vermouth as well, which was ironic. Dry vermouth in both of our cocktails today. And Guava Real. That's real guava fruit from South Africa. Guava Real. That and the Aperol plays with some real neat, sweet flavors. It's pretty cool. Pour it over top of a nice clear block of ice. Boom, boom. I am garnishing this with a little bit of bubble gum, and I forgot the candy wrap. The bubble gum.
Hey! Just on time, buddy. Well done.
I got the drink done. I didn't get to announce the name of it. It's the bubble gum Negroni. So much fun.
The title.
So cheers to you, sir.
I think I got this. Oh, just when I think I had it down. Cheers, buddy.
There it is. Cheers to you. All right. Rob, you got to announce our guests 2 weeks ago on stage with the USBG. So I'm going to give you the honor yet again to introduce our fabulous guest. Super excited. Super honored that he's joining us today. It's all you, man.
Same. A longtime friend of the industry. This man has opened up opportunities for many bartenders and enthusiasts around the world and taught them how to make better cocktails, starting off with the Negroni. The man, the myth, the legend from Tag Spirits, Mr. Tony Abou-Ganim.
Woohoo!
Hey!
Cheers, gentlemen. Here we go. Mine didn't take a minute, though.
Tony, first question always is, what are you drinking?
Well, you both riffed on the Negroni, and I'm making the classic Negroni with Fords Gin, Cinzano Rosso, Sweet Vermouth, and of course Campari. And I got a little bone to pick because I have this rule: no Campari, no Negroni. You got to call it something else.
All right. Even Aperol doesn't qualify?
Nope, something else.
All right.
The Munyon's Florida version of Campari, so I tried.
I love that stuff. That stuff is delicious. I've been playing with it a lot in cocktails. Did a riff on a Vesper with it. It was beautiful. Yeah, that's nice stuff.
I'm going to see the guys on Tuesday, so I'll tell them you said good things.
The not Grony.
So I'm just curious, how is the bubble gum Negroni? I mean, bubble gum and a Negroni just shouldn't go together.
Yeah,
I was waiting for someone to give him crap about that. I'm like, it's either going to be really good or I don't know where it's going to go.
This is already being presented to cocktail menus around the nation, by the way. And as you pointed out, it's not a Negroni because it's Aperol. And Aperol does, I think, play a very key role. The Aperol and the guava coming together start to make a bit of a Negroni or a bubblegum flavor. but I needed to boost it up and make something creative out of it. I needed a good solid spirit base and thought gin would be the best. And dry vermouth instead of sweet, because that would take us way over on the sweet side. But it's bitter because you get the bitterness from the Aperol and the gin, but then there's this sweet note of bubblegum on the finish. And I encourage you to try it. I look forward to forcing you to try it one day against your own will, Tony. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be in Kentucky in May, so let's get together and try one.
You got it. I'm going to chain you down. You don't have to finish it, but you got to taste it. All right.
Beautiful.
So you've been a busy man. You're in Vegas and whatnot. In a couple of minutes, if you could give us just a quick introduction to Tony Abou-Ganim. I know you've got like 40 years of being in the industry, but a quick introduction. And one of the things that I like to dig for is, what was the very first thing that made you fall in love with the industry? So in a couple of minutes, just a quick background on you, and what's that first, that nucleus that got you locked in?
Okay, Dan. Yeah, I grew up in the hospitality industry. My family, my mom's side of the family owned a bakery, and my father's side of the family owned a bar. So I was a chubby little drunk kid running around the house. But I learned at an early age about hospitality. Helen put me to work at the Brass Rail in 1980. She's the first woman or person to put a cocktail shaker in my hand. Back then, if you told someone you were a bartender, they'd say, well, what do you want to do? Because it really wasn't the culinary profession it is today. I stuck with it. And that aha moment for me was my 18th birthday. I was with my mom and dad, and we were at the Brass Rail. My cousin Tony and my uncle Charlie were behind the bar, and they were making all the classics for me. And I had a Tom Collins in the frosted Collins glass and a sidecar, but it was the Manhattan that just really resonated with me. And that was the moment, I didn't know it at the time, but that was the moment I would fall in love with the bar business.
The Manhattan. And what age were you when you first tasted that Manhattan?
I was 18, and at that time in Michigan, the drinking age was 18, and I was with my parents, and it was just a memorable night. I wish I could relive that night, but unfortunately, everyone in that other than me is gone, but the memory lives on.
Right. Well, God bless. That's pretty wild. I started bartending at 18 as well in Ontario, Canada. I was still in high school. I was tending bar while I was still in high school. I don't know if that made me cool or not.
I think it did.
Right. Yeah. So Helen, you talked about Helen Davis, and I would love to educate the audience today on your efforts with the Helen Davis Relief Fund and what you're doing there. It's such a fabulous cause, and you've had such great success with it. And thank you for everything you're doing with it. But I'll let you say it in your words.
Yeah, my cousin Helen David opened the Brass Rail Bar in Port Huron with her mother in 1937. And, Dean, if you think about women being in bars in 1937, it was kind of rare. The Great Depression was in full swing. We're 3 years after the repeal of Prohibition. Her father passes away. She's 21, and they were about to be put out on the street. And Helen's mom said, Helen, we have to, they inherited an ice cream parlor. So we got to turn the ice cream parlor into a saloon, or we're going to be, homeless. And Helen said, Mom, proper ladies don't run saloons. And her mother said, a lady is a lady, no matter where you put her, but she's got to have a buck in her pocket. And Helen went on to run the Brass Rail for almost 70 years until her death at the age of 91. Yeah.
What a legend. What a legend.
It truly is. And I wonder if there's another woman who in this country ever ran a bar 70 years. But in those 70 years, she survived breast cancer twice. So in her memory, and to keep her memory alive and to help bartenders around the country who are going through cancer treatment, I, along with the United States Bartenders Guild, started the Helen David Relief Fund. And to date, we've helped nearly 70 families, bartenders who are going through cancer treatment.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, and where do we find the Helen David Relief Fund on social media or otherwise?
Yeah, you can visit the United States Bartenders Guild.org, usbg.org, and click on the charitable foundation, the USBG Charitable Foundation. The Helen David is umbrellaed underneath the 501c3. So you can
Okay.
get more information. You can make a donation. You can learn about our bicycle rides we do to raise funds. We just finished the Pink Tie Party here in Las Vegas at the beautiful Palms Casino. It was a huge success, and all the proceeds go directly to the Helen David Relief Fund. So and if you're a bartender or know a bartender who is currently going through cancer treatment, please encourage them to reach out to the usbg.org Helen David Relief Fund. And we're here to help. We help with the incidental expenses, the rent, the gas bill, kid needs new shoes, all the things you don't think about above and beyond insurance and what that covers. So, yeah, I think I'd like to think Helen was very philanthropic, and that's something she instilled in me quite a bit.
Right, 70 years behind the stick. That's pretty amazing. And then the legacy she's left behind in your efforts with the fund. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, we've I've been on the bike with you many times for those bike rides for the Helen Davis Relief Fund, and learn what some of those tools are. And the I forget what it's called, but the ointment you put down there really helps. So thank you,
The butt
thank you for
burner.
yes, that stuff works. But thank you for getting me out of the bar and onto the bike. And it's something I continue today to do. At nighttime, I put in some headphones, listen to podcasts, and just enjoy. But wouldn't have done it without you. So thank you for that. But Tony, you're speaking of the USBG, the United States Bartenders Guild. We recently shared the stage last week in Las Vegas at the USBG Shake It Up competition. What was your overall thoughts of the competition and the competitors?
It's amazing. I joined the USBG in 1996 when there was one chapter, and that was the Southern California chapter. I represented the United States 3 times in the Bacardi Martini Grand Prix, and my third effort, I was the world champion. The only other world champion is Dale DeGroff, so I feel like I'm in pretty good company. But the IBA, the International Bartenders Association, is the governing body that the USBG reports to. So it really is a worldwide organization. It's an amazing brotherhood, sisterhood, from family of bartenders. Everyone like-minded individuals, and it's so much fun. And like I said, I was just in Brazil, and I called up the president of the Brazilian chapter and said I was coming, and I show up in Rio and the red carpet is out, and everywhere I went, it really is a special organization. Today in the United States, we have nearly 70 chapters. We formed the second chapter here in Las Vegas. Myself and Francesco Lafranconi started that in 2000. And since then, as I mentioned, they've grown to over 70 chapters nationwide.
That's huge. And the competitors that were on stage, they were qualifying for the IBA World Cocktail Championship as well as the IBA Pan American Games for the classic division of properly mixing cocktails and everything. Can you explain the difference of what IBA technique and how IBA cocktails competitions are judged differently than what most bartenders would be associated with for a bartending competition as of in the States?
No, absolutely. Key is it's overall. It's not just making a great drink, but it's your performance. And as you know, being a flair guy, I mean, the performance in flair is so much of the overall score when you're competing. We don't
Right.
usually do that with cocktail competitions in the United States. It's pretty much based solely on the drink itself. But in IBA competitions, you're also judged on your technical performance. And you mentioned the competition in Las Vegas, the qualifier for the IBA finals. I had the pleasure of doing the technical judging because there's not a lot of people that compete technically. When I did it, the first Bacardi Martini, I trained for weeks, and I was lucky to have Francesco Lafranconi from the Italian chapter to coach me because it really was like an athletic event. I had every movement down. I had the time down. I had, you don't want to handle the glass wrong or touch the ice or overpour or underpour. It's all these little elements. And when you watch a technically proficient bartender work, it's like a Flair performance without the music. And it really is a thrill to watch someone who works technically proficient behind the bar.
It really is like a dance, like an art, like you said. When for Flair, I think it translates a little better for the audience because it's about big moves and being entertained. But
Yes.
with IBA techniques, it's the little things and why they're doing certain things that the bartenders geek out on that doesn't quite translate to the audience yet until
Yeah.
they're educated.
Yes.
So for me, the first time I went was 2013 when I represented the United States at the IBA Pan American Games. I was lost. I had no idea how we're being judged. Like, what is this? What you're judging? What? And thank God for Julio Cabrera, who was there representing us for Classic. Who's like, Rob, let me give you a quick education. And I did decent, but that was the start of my IBA career. So it's completely different. Personally, I think some of the rules are outdated, but there's a lot of good technique as well. But it's about, like you said, it's about just being professional and putting on a show and driving towards the intricacy of the cocktails.
It's like knowing the history of the 1944 Mai Tai. Not every guest wants to hear the story, but the fact that you know the story and can tell the story, and it's the little things, and I'm whenever I go, and I'm sure you guys are the same way. When you sit down at a bar, immediately you're looking around, and it's like, did he just handle the ice? Did he pick up the glass from? Just little things like that.
The dirty dump, right?
It's like, are there 6 different pour spouts on the back bar? Little things. Because I agree with you, it's a whole different world. But if you're aware of that world, it's going to make you a better bartender, I think.
And how do you feel? Or do you guys judge for even small amounts of flair, like a spinning of a tin or a rolling of a spoon or anything like that? Pours and cuts?
I think that's, kind of part of the personal flair, the working flair, if you will.
Right.
And if you do it proficiently, because as you guys know better than anyone, someone who's good, like you guys are with flair, that's a thing of beauty. When someone's bad and trying to flair,
Right. Yes.
that can be a little painful.
Right.
So
yeah.
if you can incorporate a little move like that, I love it. I bring your personality to the performance. But yeah, I would refer to that as working flair. Just like you said, that little spin, that little. The thing that kind of bums me out today, and I learned both with the jigger and with free pouring, and the whole use of the jigger today in the craft cocktail world, it's just gotten a little too much. It's kind of like, are you just trying to impress people with the way you can use 3 jiggers and pour? I don't know.
Rolling in between their fingers and whatnot.
Yeah.
You mean? Yeah, I think that alone is a little bit of flair, honestly. But when the free pour was kind of taken out of the industry, I thought a little bit of the sexy part of the industry went out with it. It's certainly speed and efficiency.
Well, I see more mistakes made by bartenders using a jigger. I don't want to say more, but all as opposed to someone who really can free pour. Free pouring was an art. It's a jigger. If you're cheating the jigger or over pouring or tail, it's just, why are you using the jigger? I think the jigger has its place, absolutely. And Helen, when she taught me to be a bartender in 1980, she said, you measure out 1 ounce, but drinks were also 85 cents. So, today in the world of the $20 cocktail, you're not as worried about that 1/4 ounce, but I think it's a lost art, the art of free pouring.
I agree, and to play on what Dean said, as long as I have a Spills Top 28550 pour spout, like the exact model number, in my bottles and it free pours, I'm confident that I can free pour and be accurate and be a lot quicker this way. But if I'm using like a container without it, like for juice or like my lime juice for my daiquiri, I will actually jigger pour that because I want to be accurate at that because I don't quite pour that well. But Dean and I both, and I learned this from Dean, are pretty accurate with the Real bottle and doing a squeeze for a half ounce, which Dean, you brought up in the broadcast. I'm the same way, where you don't have to dirty up your jigger and it makes you quick. So just it's being, I've always looked at flair and I've always looked at free pouring as being a master of your tools. And this is just one step towards that.
I totally agree with that. I remember we had Steve Schneider on the show a couple of Halloweens ago, and he was watching our 1 minute mixology, and he commented afterwards. He said, "I was counting you guys. I was counting your free pours." And he complimented. I said, "Well, you did pretty good." So having a guy like that compliment it. It's an absolute art, the free pour. Rob does a great seminar on free pour. It's an absolute art, and there's a lot of ways to work it into actual movements behind the bar, so you don't have to, bubble 2, 3, 4 each pour. But it's an absolute art form, and I hope to see it come back.
Yeah, and again, I think it's one of those things. At this point in my life, I mean, if I can't feel it, I've done something wrong for 43 years.
Yeah, right.
Real quick, Steve Schneider's story. I love that guy. I'm sitting at the bar at Employees Only in New York, and it's busy. It's bumping, and a gentleman comes up and orders 2 old fashions. And this is just as we're kind of getting away from the muddled fruit in the old fashioned. That's the way we all came up with it, right?
Early 2000 teens.
Yep. And, Dave Wondrich discovered the old fashioned predates the Penn Dentist Club. And Steve said to the customer, he said, "With or without muddled fruit," which I loved. Because who should ultimately decide? The person who's drinking the drink, paying for the drink, enjoying the drink. And the customer said, "With muddled fruit." I was standing right there.
Right.
And it was a beautiful moment where Steve, again, hospitality. Let me make it the way you want to drink it.
Right. I was at the Penn Dentist Club a few times, and I won't go into that story with soda water or old fashioned. Tony, let me skip ahead. We got to have Steve back on the show. We got to make a note of that. He's been doing some amazing things out there.
Yeah.
But Tony, let's talk about some of the other events that you run. You're just into absolutely everything. The TAG Global Spirits Awards, TAG Tony Abou-Ganim Global Spirits Awards. Give us some more details on that and where we can follow or watch that and follow it along.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. I was hoping that we would be having the results of the 3rd annual. It just took place here in Las Vegas at the beautiful Delano Resort at the Mandalay Bay. But they're coming shortly. And it was our 3rd annual. It is a spirits competition that we, along with Dave Grapschi and Julio Bermejo, started 4 years ago. We were so committed that we designed our own glass. I've got to send you some of our Universal Spirit glasses. Because
I'd be drinking from it today if I did.
Well, it wouldn't hold your bubblegum Negroni, but it. But when we started, we said we want to make sure that we treat every spirit that enters in the best possible light. And we couldn't find one glass that universally did gin as well as, tequila as well as whiskey. So we designed one. So I'll send you both some of my glasses, but it just wrapped up. We had nearly 700 entries this year. What we try to do is bring in the consumer as well, the end user, because we want to really promote those brands that do well in the competition. And we also tie in, I mentioned the Pink Tie Party that we benefits the Helen David Relief Fund. So we do a philanthropic, we do educational, and like I said, we promote those winners that enter, especially for a small brand trying to get some exposure. Like I said with my Negroni, not that it's a small brand, but this is Forged Gin, which was last year's best of show gin. So,
oh wow,
our dear friend,
gin. There's a bartender's gin for you.
A Flair bartender's gin. Simon Flair was a Flair bartender back in the day.
That's right.
I did not know that.
Yes, we've bonded over that many a times over some cocktails.
Right.
I can see how the bottle design actually lends itself to being a Flair bottle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
and
great
craft side on the back with the notches. Like he did it all. He did it right.
Yeah. And since I have it in my hand and my first Negroni's gone, if you don't mind, I'm just going to mix myself another one.
Wow. No judgment here. This is Planet Fitness over here.
As Jimmy Buffett said, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
It's actually 5 o'clock there, isn't it?
It is 5 o'clock here.
That's funny.
We got another 30 minutes.
Well, I've got plenty of products, so I'm not going to go thirsty.
Right. So you do a lot of work with bartenders with Forge Gin right there. There's Robin Clausen saying, "Hi, y'all. I love the Negronis."
Hey, what's up, Robin?
An old Vegas girl up in Indy now. Yes, talking about
Love
famous flair bartenders. She's awesome.
Yay.
So Tony, the work that you do with the bartenders, we've been talking briefly about Tito's advocacy program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just starting to hear more about it, and you've told me a few things about it, and I would love for you to share that with our viewers if you got a moment.
Well, I have a long history with Tito. I discovered Tito in 1999. I was reading a trade magazine, and I come across this headline: Tito's Vodka, first legal distillery in Texas. And I did a little more research, and I find out that 6 states at that time he was in, one of them was Nevada. So I call Southern Wine, and I say, "You got this Tito Vodka?" And they're like, "Never heard of it." So I called DeLuca, which is now Breakthrough. I said, Rich Morris, my buddy, I said, "Do you guys got this Tito's Vodka?" He said, "Oh, yeah, we got it." I said, "Could I get a sample? I just read about it." He said, "You can have as much as you want. We can't give this stuff away."
Get rid of it.
I can't get rid of it. So next day, a couple bottles were on my desk. I tasted it. I was like, wow, all right, this is a little different. This is good. It's, that corn kind of mash sweetness. So I took it up and tasted about a dozen of our bartenders, and they all had the same reaction. So I called the distillery, and I was like, "I'm looking for a Mr. Tito beverage." And the gentleman said, "You got Tito." I was like, "Tito, Tony Abou-Ganim, Bellagio Resort."
Answer the phone with Tito beverage.
Tito. And I said, "Tito, I just tried your vodka. I love it. We want to bring it in. But before we do, we'd love for you to come out, tell your story, do a tasting, meet the team." And he said, no. I was like, no, nobody had ever said no. I'm not asking Dean, Rob, I'm not asking for any money. I'm just saying, we want you to come out and do your thing. I mean, people would die for that opportunity at the Bellagio. 2 weeks later, I get a call from Andrea, my assistant, still to this day. She's like, there's a Mr. Tito beverage on the phone for you. I said, "Tito, how are you?" He said, "When do you want me there?" And the story was that his fiance at the time, now wife, Lori, who was a dear friend also, went to the shack because he had this little shack that he built and was making everything himself from a homemade still. Saw this post-it, Tony Abou-Ganim, Bellagio, Las Vegas. And she said, "What's that all about?" And he said, "Somebody called me from Las Vegas, Bellagio, and, wanted me to come out and sell my vodka there." She said, "Well, when are you going to go?" And he said, "I told him I couldn't." And I'm not sure, but I got a feeling. And she said, "Are you out of your frickin' mind?"
Right.
And I don't think she said frickin', but anyway.
Right.
He came out, everyone fell in love with him, and we brought it into all 29 bars, and all of a sudden people were like, when someone would order a vodka soda, they're like, "Have you ever tried Tito's out of Texas, Austin?" And what are you going to say to a beautiful cocktail waitress in Las Vegas? "No, I don't want it." And it just kind of happened organically, and we've been friends ever since. So they're launching a bartender advocacy program because Tito understands it really was us. It was the bartender who helped build his brand. And one thing about Tito, he hasn't changed a bit. I was just with him 6 months ago. He's the same cat I met 25 years ago. And he loves bartenders. And the bartender advocacy program is a way to give back to us, to the bartending community that helped build the brand.
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy to hear that you put them on the map.
Yeah. I don't want to say that, but
I know I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
I think it was his biggest order to date when we placed our order at Bellagio. But
yeah. Well, as you know,
hold on,
There we go.
There it is.
I feel a little behind now,
there,
dude.
right? The high pour,
Taking it to the rim. Taking it to the rim.
Wood flare.
We're gonna have to change the pedal the next show to 3 more drinks with Tony Abou-Ganim. Yeah.
One thing I love with Tito's is when I first got to know them was after you, obviously. It wasn't 99, but probably like 2003-ish when they came to Florida. And we had a dinner down in South Florida, and they brought in like they called us influencers at the time, which we had no idea what the hell that was. This is way before social media was really crazy. So we all had a dinner with Tito. And by the end of that dinner, like, you love the guy. Like, I don't care what you're selling. I want to support what you're doing because I genuinely love you. And I remember telling them, the marketing team, that I'm like, whatever you do with the website, whatever you do, get it out there, have him sell it. Have him tell that message he told us today, and you guys will be on fire.
Yep. It's
great.
I've done so many events with him. Early on, we did a USBG event together in Texas where we did Austin, Houston, and Dallas. And there was, I think, 3 people on the Tito's team, Tito and myself, and we didn't even fly. We drove by van. So, I mean, it was, and I just did it, I just love the guy. I really do. And, he is such a big supporter of the USBG, of the Helen David. He just made a $150,000 contribution to the USBG.
It was huge,
right? I mean, it just, and there's Robin. Yeah, he does. People that love dogs love Tito's.
Excellent. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up.
I've got my 2 rescue dogs here right now. So we've got that in common. And my girlfriend has 2 rescue dogs, little Chihuahuas. Zeus's favorite toy is that Tito's bottle, the squeaky Tito's bottle. He'll chase that thing all day.
Tony, let me ask you this. Now, speaking of Tito's and you talked a little bit earlier about Bellagio and stuff, is you've created something from going from bartender to having another avenue to go from there with consulting. Explain to us some advice that you would give yourself when you first started consulting that you know now, and our viewers, like how to step out of behind the bar and start going into consulting and some of the fears that you might have and how to overcome them.
No, absolutely. Rob, it's a difficult step. I think more so today. I decided in 2004, after 5.5 years at Bellagio, that was kind of the tipping point. Things were really changing, and a lot of people were reaching out to me to consult and to do programs. And I kind of felt like I'd reached the pinnacle of where I was going to go within Bellagio and MGM. That's when I formed the Modern Mixologist. And it's been fantastic. But you also have to remember, back then, there weren't many people doing it. Steve Olson was out there. Dale was doing some consulting, but there wasn't the competition like there is today. But there also weren't the jobs available to bartenders. You know as well as I do. You had a couple choices as a bartender. You could take a bump to be a bar manager, a beverage manager, and nobody wanted that job. I mean, that was, or you could go to work for a distributor
and pay, right?
Exactly. More hours, more headaches, less money, less fun. Or you could go to work for a distributor and sell product. There wasn't, brand ambassador roles. There weren't influencers. There weren't things like, education, very little education going on. So I think I was at the right time, at the right place, with the right message. I have an acting background. I don't know if any of our viewers recognize me, but in 1993, I was the Alka-Seltzer Plus cold and flu guy.
Oh.
A lot of people know that. Yeah. When bartenders ask me, how do I get to do things like you're doing? And you have to be comfortable speaking in front of groups. Um, like even the Shake It Up competition, you've got to run that show. I mean, Rob, you did a fantastic job emceeing that. That's not easy to do. Somebody hands you a microphone like you did and said, "We're running behind. Can you fill a little time?" You got to be able to get up there and engage an audience. So I say, take acting classes, take speech classes, you
Wow,
become
great,
a
right?
public speaker. I mean, it's just because to educate, it's not as easy as just knowing everything. That's why you don't see more celebrity chefs on TV, because it's hard to stir a pot of soup and tell an engaging story at the same time. That there's an art to that, and it takes a lot of practice.
I agree. And with the Shake It Up, it's definitely a team effort. There were so many people behind the scenes. And I want to give a big shout out to Nick Hawk and Harry Rivera, who stepped up last minute and helped execute it. Like, they did a great job. So thank you guys for that. That made it happen. Marcy, who co-emceed, she was amazing.
She was
But
great.
now that you've have the cojones, if you will, or you've had the fortitude to kind of believe in yourself and do the consulting, how do you take it from, all right, I'm consulting for my friend's bar, I'm consulting for the competing nightclub down the street that somebody bartended one time, to now I'm consulting for the Las Vegas Knights, now I'm consulting for Royal Caribbean? How do you ramp it up and go from there and kind of like have the confidence to do it?
Well, you just nailed it right there, Rob. The confidence to do that. I've pretty much spent the last 43 years of my life behind bars. And my saying is, I want to be better today than I was yesterday. There's always something to learn. You can always improve. And this is an apprenticeship business. This is a mentorship industry. I mean, what I try to do, I get prouder when I see one of my proteges do well in a cocktail competition, or get an article in a magazine, or interviewed on TV. I mean, to me, that is better than it happening to me at this point in my career. But
Right.
I think it was Albert Einstein who said the only way to gain knowledge is through experience. And that's something I think that is so important to instill in young bartenders. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years and years. And this business is built on relationships. Had I not called Tito 26 years ago and brought him to Las Vegas, I wouldn't have ended up writing the foreword to their book and being part of the bartender advocacy program. I mean, it's all about building and nurturing relationships. Like no other industry that I know. I mean, anything good that has happened to me has come through relationships. You mentioned the Knights and the Raiders. That came through a relationship with my partner's wife from Libertine Social. And that relationship started from doing an episode of Iron Chef with Sean McLean, who is my partner at Libertine and at Highlands in Detroit. And then she introduced me to the people at Levy Restaurant Group, who hired me to do the program at T-Mobile Arena, which is where the Knights play. And that led to pitching the program to the Raiders at Allegiant Stadium. And, it's all about building and nurturing those relationships. And I can't instill that enough in young bartenders. Someone told me once, if a writer calls you for a quote or an interview, you call them right back immediately, because they are on a tight time frame. You need to get back to them. And if you become reliable, and they will reach out to you. And that's really how it started with me. I mean, Dale was in New York. This is like 1995, when this was all just in the infancy. And they would call Dale for a quote. They would call me for a quote in San Francisco at the Starlight Room. And it kind of led to starting to establish these relationships that led Steve Wynn to find me in 1998 and bring me from the Starlight Room in San Francisco to do the program at the Bellagio, which, really changed my life. But it was just, again, all of those relationships and the people that come into your life that make those things happen.
Right. And what I see, Sorry, go ahead, Tony. I didn't want to interrupt.
And then showing up. I can't remember who said this, but it said half of being successful is just showing up on time. Show
Right.
up and be prepared. Nobody wants to see a hungover bartender doing a cocktail presentation at 9 in the morning. I mean, show up, be prepared, and that's
And one
and a
of the
little luck.
things that I'm taking from this, and that I have seen in my own career and others as well, is building those relationships with your peer group. It's not about finding the most successful person and latching onto them. It's just growing relationships with your peer group. And as you've described, as that peer group grew, you grew with them, and they grew with you. And you were able to support each other along the way, and create opportunities for each other along the way, right?
No, absolutely. And there are more opportunities today than ever, but there's also more competition than ever.
Right, right.
And and that's why I say, you should just keep bettering yourself, keep learning, keep being out there, keep saying yes. I
Say
I'm
yes and show up.
it's say yes and show up prepared.
Right, right. I mean, look at Rob and I in this, and then we can look back at the whole list of flair bartenders that have influenced the industry. We were talking
Mhm.
about Fort's Gin, and we had Philip Raimondo on, and even Philip
Oh,
Duff, who's a
yeah.
famous mixologist now. He started in the flair world, so it's about fostering those relationships and being a good steward to the other people that you're working with. Um, One of my questions that I wanted to ask you, Tony, is about pricing. I know this could be a very sensitive subject, but I have found this in many different industries. I used to work as a professional magician. I used to work with circus groups getting hired out, and they'd become competitive with each other inside the same city. And this happens with consulting and event bartenders as well. What's your philosophy on pricing yourself? A, so you're making some money, but B, so you're not undercutting anybody and you're getting the jobs you want that you deserve. What's your philosophy on pricing yourself professionally, I suppose?
That's so funny you asked that, because when I first set up the Modern Mixologist, the first call that I made about this subject was to Dale DeGroff, because he was
Right.
doing it. And he said, always ask for first class. You can take coach, but then you have a place to negotiate from. And that always kind of made sense to me, that the way I look at it is, you can't charge 2,500 until you've made 2,000. So you have to kind of put a price on your worth, on your value, on what you're bringing. And that, I have a saying that it's my fee or it's free. And I'll do a lot of things for charity. I do a lot of charity stuff, because, I mean, that to me pays me in a way that money can't. But I've
Right.
turned down a lot of work because I don't know what other people are getting exactly, but I think I'm probably charging close to what most of the top people get. And I lose a lot of work because once it's a small industry, you
Right.
can't charge someone $2,000 and then do it for someone else for $500.
Yep.
You have to say
You can't
this
do the
is
same work.
different.
Right.
Yeah, because it's like, what you paid him 500. I just paid him $2,000. It's so you have to stick to your pricing, and you have to earn that pricing. Like I said, once you've made $2,000 for an appearance, that's your fee, and you only
Right.
go up from there. In my opinion, you only go up from there. Now, there's ways to, I'll throw this in, or I'll be happy to do this, but I can't go below this, and
So
that's
if I get the conversation going with a potential customer, and I'm like, I charge $1,000 for my day, and he's like,
yeah.
oh, well, that's a little too much. Where do I take the conversation from there? Do I just stick to it and hope I don't lose the gig? But I need the $1,000 in my pocket.
Well, something I'll do is, like, can we look at 3 events? Is it possible to do 3 events? And I could, I'll give you a 20% discount on 3. but my day
Oh,
rate is 1,000. But if you
right.
want to do 3, we can get a little discount on that. And I don't like to, nickel dime. My thing is like first class if it's more than a 3-hour flight, and I'll negotiate on that. I mean, as long as you're flying me United, I'll take a close flight. So I can save you a little bit of money there, but once you start underrating or undercutting your own rate, it's a slippery slope.
Right.
And like I said, I'll lose a lot of work because I stick to my fee.
Right.
I
I agree.
also
Go
I'll
ahead,
also
Tony.
do things like, okay, I'll do it for free if you make a $1,000 donation to the Helen David.
There you go.
So I mean, for me, there's things like that.
A great comment from Allison Scott. I agree with the philosophy. Asking for what you are worth is the hardest part. But if but you have to know what you're worth, and that's
Yes.
that's kind of the question, right? How do you figure out what you're worth?
Well,
Uh,
I said it earlier. It's like,
Thank you, Allison.
I mean, bartenders tonight, I'm not tonight, today, I can count on one hand when I was working behind the bar regularly that I made $500. I mean, there are bartenders today that's depending where you're working, you're making $300 to $500 a night.
Right. So you've got to start
So
there, right?
you have to start there. You have to
Right.
start there. But also, it's not like I'm working 5 nights a week. I might do, if I do 2 gigs a month where I'm a featured, that's a busy month for me. I do, that doesn't include the Raiders or the Knights or the restaurant or what I do in Detroit or the Tag Spirits Awards or any of that type of stuff, Royal Caribbean. That's like, you want to hire me to come speak at a conference, or I do a lot of things. I love doing events that have nothing to do with our industry. Like I did a cocktail event for IBM recently, and it was a great event. It paid very well. They flew me out first class hotel, and I did a 2-hour event for IBM executives. Nothing to do with cocktails, but it was a cool event, like a team building event. And they loved it. So I try to book as many of those type of gigs as possible. But I've got to, in if I do 2 a month or even 1 a month, I got to at least make enough money that would kind of compensate some of those nights I'm not behind the bar.
Right.
When I have this conversation about pricing with people that I try to mentor through the event bartending or speaking conference,
Mhm.
I always say is like, well, how much do you feel like you're worth? And they'll always go to, well, I normally make 500 a shift, so I'll charge 500. I'm like, okay, well, that's where you're starting off wrong. You can't
Yeah.
just charge what you normally make because now you're
No.
losing money. Because the time
No.
you're not at work, that bartender covering for you is going to take your gas and you're losing residual income. Like charge more. I've learned this. I say no more than I say yes.
I agree.
Because I value my time and I value
Yep.
our industry. My time and what I know I'm going to put into this is worth this. And if
Yep.
it's not for you, that's okay. No problem. I'll
That's
go
fine.
back to what I'm normally doing. But I
Mhm.
know when I learned that lesson and taught myself that lesson is the events that I charge for this, there's no stress. It's
Yeah.
usually pretty done. They'll listen to whatever you say because they're paying their premium price. When I start nickel and diming and doing these lower events, that's where all the stress comes in and it's not worth the headache. Know your
That's
worth and don't
fine.
be afraid to stand for your worth.
Yep.
Right.
No, I absolutely agree. And that's
That's a fabulous point.
Yeah.
Additional to that, when you undercut yourself and you're down, you're actually undercutting the entire industry, and you're making everyone else in the industry look like they're way overcharging, and it's just it doesn't do good for anybody if you're going undercut and be really cheap and do it for little. So it's
No.
not helping anybody.
And Dean, it's funny you say that because that was one of my things from the beginning. It was like, if I'm not asking for X, how is the person below me who's working their way up going to get Y? And I am lucky because I let Andrea talk money. She's my assistant.
There you go.
She talks money, and she is a bulldog. She will not. She's like she's gonna go in high and come down bitterly.
That's absolutely. When the need arises, I'm going to appoint Allison to that for sure.
Exactly.
She'll get me double what I could ever ask for,
Yep.
for sure.
I'm like, you got what for us? And I was like, yay, all right. Night
Tony,
sticker.
we'd like to invite you to the second portion of our show, which happens on Patreon, which is now up and running. There's some great
Yay.
content on there. It's a portion of the show that we call One More Drink with Tony Abou-Ganim. And it's only available on Patreon, so we're having a little fun doing that. So I'm hoping you can join us there. Yes?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Love
But
to.
before we go there, we have a question, a new segment to One Drink With. Special thanks to Joe for helping us put this together. Our guest from last week, we are asking that each guest to prepare a question for the following week's guest. So
Okay.
last week on the show, we had Manny Picon, who you recognize from the Bartending Competitions and USBG member. He was our show last week. He prepared a secret question for Tony Abou-Ganim. And we would like to roll that video and that question for you now. Are you ready for that one?
Bring it on.
This is the section we call Pouring It Forward.
Hi, Tony. Manny here. Big fan of you. My question for this week. How do you feel? How was the pressure to be the only technical judge during our Shake It Up 2024 in Vegas? How you see the result, and how do you think USPG will make it in the next World Cup Championship?
Wow.
Tough question. Did you get all that?
I did. I believe he was asking me about the technical performances of the competitors at the USBG Shake It Up competition. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, pretty much that. And then how you think our competitors will fare in the World Cocktail Championship, it sounded like was the end question.
And the pressure of being the sole judge.
Yeah.
Right, that's a lot.
Well, as I said earlier, there's not a whole lot of American judges who have experience judging technical or have performed in technical. And I've coached a lot of the people who have competed in IBA competitions on the technical. Bridget Albert, Dave Nepov, both who have done very well in IBA competitions. You have to train. I hate to even say this, but if they show up and perform the way they did against an international panel, they're not going to do well. We have never done well. We've never won this competition. And it's not their fault because, as you said earlier, we do not work like this. You know, bartenders in Italy, bartenders in Brazil, and they've trained this. It's like being an athlete. And that, I think, was my closing remark after the competition was, you have to practice. We have to get some coaching because you're going to be nervous. You know, you've got one shot at it. And if you haven't rehearsed this 1,000 times, you're not going to compete with these folks on the technical part of it. So it's no one's fault. It's something to be competitive in an international level in this type of competition. There's no room for errors. There's no room for a spill. There's no room for an overpour. There's no room for a mishandling. And the only way to be confident with that is to train, practice. So we've got some work to do. And hopefully they'll do the work.
I agree. Well said. And I think so many competitors in the United States are afraid to compete in IBA competitions because they just don't know how to do it. And I think we have to get the education out there first and throw on more competitions outside of just these qualifiers for them to properly prepare for it.
Totally agree. And like I said, the first year that I competed, I was interviewed by the Las Vegas Review Journal, and they said, "How you think you're going to do?" I said, "I'm confident. I'm prepared. I'm going to win." Coming in second is like kissing your sister. Well, that year, I kissed my
And
sister.
my sister's pretty cute.
Well, you're pretty cute too, so I bet she is. But um, I I came back the next year and didn't place. And the third year, I trained even harder, and I was confident in my drink, the story of my drink. I was prepared, and I won that year. So it took me 3 years, but it takes a lot of work. You can't just show up and dial it in.
Right. And for you taking 3 years, it takes many others a career to get there. And I think every flair bartender that's had any success has the same thing to say about bartending competitions. You have to get on stage in order to learn how to compete.
Yep.
You can practice all day, but you have to get up there and you have to lose a round. You have to lose a year in order to learn how to win.
Yep. That's I'm going to steal that. You have to learn how to win. And that's when I tell young bartenders, like, just compete. Even if you don't win, you're going to be better than next time.
Yeah.
Just keep competing, and then all of a sudden you'll find your groove. And
there's a different level of the camaraderie as well. From when bartenders are hanging out with spectators, it's one thing, but when they're hanging out with other people that have joined the stage, there's nothing matters how well you did on stage. As soon as your foot hits the stage, you've become a different tier, another level, or an elite. So Tony, we're going into something that we like to call the final sip. So this is where Rob and I take our final sip of our first drink, and you take your final sip of your second. And we just like to share your favorite part of the show. What part of the show came up that you really enjoyed, or a little tidbit that you'd like to share in our final sip. But with this one, Tony, you go last. All three of us get to go on this one. So, Rob, you go first.
Okay, as my final sip, I think the thing that resonates the most with this show was, don't be afraid to charge what you don't think you're worth. So when it comes to negotiation, you'll settle for more than you really are worth.
Interesting.
Got to put that on a shirt. Preacher Rob, the preacher Houston, has spoken.
He's been giving you that nickname the last 2 weeks.
We've been doing this show for a few years now, Tony, and Rob gets these perfect quotes that he just comes out with, these perfect quotes, and sometimes he goes off, so I like to call him the preacher.
The spirits talk to him.
Right.
The spirit.
That's funny too. My final sip today is when you were calling out to. I guess I got to do this tip. I chopped it up with a little extra gin for you, Tony. When we were talking about Tito Beverage and you reaching out to him and saying, "Hey, I want you to come and present," and then growing together with the other people in the industry, supporting each other. If I'm a new guy, help support the other new guys, and certainly get to know as many of the veterans as you can and try to lift up. But growing together and not being afraid to reach out to other people and saying, "Hey, let's try to do something together," and help be of service to other people that are in the industry. So that's my final sip. My one of my fun takeaways from this show. There were many. So thank you, Tony.
Oh, it was a pleasure. So my final sip of my second Negroni.
Atta boy.
I think the importance of giving back, not only philanthropically to help those less fortunate, but to give back to the next generation of great bartenders.
Yes.
Young bartenders ask me, what does it take to become a great bartender? And I say, work with and learn from great bartenders. And I just had this, I just spoke at UNLV and someone presented that question. I said, I am a collection of all the great bartenders that I've worked with over the years. And I've taken a little something from each one of them and made it my own style. And I really think it's important then to give back to those coming up. So both philanthropically and from a mentorship perspective, to give back.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And I mean, Rob and I have been building all of this on that. And I remember years ago, like many years ago, deciding that I wanted to be in the industry to teach other people how to love it as much as I do. Words very well spoken, Tony. Tony, we're going to put you up on a screen here with some contact information. If you
All
could
right.
kind of show us how do we find you online? How can other people keep up to you before we go on to the Patreon? And everyone's welcome to join us there. But Tony, a final word to our viewers and where we can find you.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Dean. I mean, there's my Instagram handle, MDRN Mixologist. If you have any questions, Tony at themodernmixologist.com. Themodernmixologist.com is my website, but Tony at the Modern Mixologist is the best way to get in touch with me. I love to make it interactive. If there's anything that I can ever do for anyone in the bartending community, I encourage you to reach out and get involved with the Helen David Relief Fund, with our Team Happiness. That's our bicycle team. We're looking to do bicycle rides in October throughout the country. As Rob mentioned, he's saddled up with us. Dean, we're going to get you out again on a bike. So
yeah, I was out in Louisville a number of years back.
You were in Louisville. Yes, that's right. Get out, ride some miles. And, I would just love to leave everyone with a quick toast if I could. Is that acceptable?
Of course.
Yes, absolutely.
I have just a small sip left, but I'm going to raise my Negroni and leave you with this. In the presence of a well-made Negroni, taut nerves relax, taut muscles relax, eyes brighten, friendships deepen, and the whole world becomes a better place in which to live. As Helen would say, happiness.
Cheers to happiness. Thank you very much, Mr. Tony Abou-Ganim. We'll see you in the Patreon. Well done. Great conversation, Tony. Thank you for our guests' comments coming in. Absolutely wonderful. Big shout out to Joe, our producer, Joe Messina. And I can't wait to have Tony on One More Drink With in the Patreon.
Yeah, I know you guys, you hear me say it every time, but seriously, the One More Drink With is my favorite part of the show. It's where we loosen up the ties, we have real conversations, and just like I was trying to tell Tony what it was all about, was like, imagine going to Tales of the Cocktail. 2:30 a.m. You're at the old Absinthe House having conversation with like 10 bartenders and like, oh my God, that was amazing. It just blew my mind. I wish there was a camera. That's what this is all about. It's just real talk, no bullshit, and it's just so enlightening and motivating.
There's a little bit of bullshit in it. It's fun. And you're the only person that wears a tie to such an event, for sure.
I mean, I am wearing the USBG tie as in honor of today's episode. So,
but speaking Rob, of episodes, who's our guest next week? Let us know what's going on.
And I'm going to butcher his name, but he's a dear friend, Solbach Silk. He is you might see him on Instagram, which has been blowing up lately as the Flair Judge POV. He's judged a lot of Flair competitions throughout the years, mainly outside of the United States, and now started a whole channel and a whole conversation, more importantly, about the judge's perspective of judging bartending competitions. So many of us in the crowd think, oh, why didn't he win? This is my favorite bartender. Or as a competitor, why I didn't win. He is actually showing you, as a judge's perspective, why you didn't win, not afraid to say it, and a lot of controversial topics of when to share the rules, when to share the scores, how to be transparent, how to lose graciously, and how to contest the judges when you need to as well. I got a feeling this is going to be a great episode. I respect the man a lot, and I respect the comments that are going to come in the questions, because I know this is a hot controversy right now. And I'm just looking forward to seeing where the conversation goes.
Absolutely. After every bartending competition, or any competition for that matter, but in our experience, flair bartending competitions and cocktail competitions, the judges are always going under scrutiny and whatnot. We've seen many crazy situations, and I'll leave them at that. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from what's his name? How do you say that?
Sobok Sok. I know I'm butchering it, but that's the best I can do in my crazy
Just a dumb Canadian guy. I'm really just a dumb Canadian guy trying to figure that out. But yeah, super excited to hear that. I'd like to see if we can get some people to come in for some good questions from the comments section. I might bait the comments section a bit. One more drink with coming up. Patreon.com/Cocktail Network Live. Please join in and follow and support us. Know that any money going into Patreon is going right back into the community. Rob and I are not buying Porsches with such money. We are putting all that money back into bartending competitions, and that will become prize money. It will become money to make sure that these broadcasts are stronger and better so that we can put your faces in front of the world. So please know if you're a bartender joining us on the Patreon that is exactly where all of that money is going. We will not pocket a penny of it. All right. Rob, you want to take us out?
I'd love to. Dean, again, thank you as always. Mondays are my new tradition, and it's my favorite day of the week now. And happy to be sharing it with you, with our viewers, with our guests, and Joe behind the scenes, putting in the hours of work during the week that you guys don't see for the hour that you get to see. So, Joe, thank you very much.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. Tuesdays are my favorite night because that's date night. I love my Allison. All right, we'll wrap this up. We'll see you guys in the Patreon in just a few minutes. Thank you very much.